Welcome to In the Flow, a podcast for women pursuing God's Spirit in life and leadership. I'm Kelley Johnson, and this season, we're exploring what it means to become the listening leader. Because clarity and alignment with the Lord creates a more impactful leader. Each conversation invites you to slow down, lean in, and lead from a place of attunement with the Lord so that we can grow in spirit-led wisdom and authentic power. Let's get in the flow. So many turning points in my career, in my life, personally, professionally, have been impacted by those that I listen to. As we continue this journey around becoming a listening leader, today I want to talk about who do we listen to? I want to explore the voices that we pay attention to and how they influence us, in particular, mentors. And those can be informal or formal mentors. I've had people mentor me as a mother. I've had people mentor me as obviously a leader, as well as mentors who just help you in the moment to figure something out. And so in our previous conversation, we explored the story of Elijah and how we listen in seasons of uncertainty or perhaps burnout. And today we're going to really think about the role of the voices that pour into us and how God can use them through mentors and other wise people or people who just have experiences that we don't have. And as I was preparing for this conversation, a few of my mentors really stood out that I wanted to highlight with you. And later, you'll also hear directly from one of my mentors. So the first person is Linda. Linda was instrumental in my career in helping me navigate from marketing and communications into human resources. She was a new vice president at the company. I'd already been there several years, and I was in this marketing and communications role where I was responsible for content on our intranet. And I was desperate looking for new content to publish. And so I started exploring diversity and the industry that I was a part of and using that data to educate our leaders. And I'm publishing this content again, mostly because I was trying to fill a need. And so when Linda came on board, she wanted to find out who's pushing that content out. And when my boss told me about it, I was nervous. I thought she was going to tell me to cease and desist. And I thought she would, feel like I was stepping on her toes. And so I was really nervous. But what started off with me being afraid of a potential conflict turned into one of my greatest mentors in my career. Linda was an amazing woman. She's gone on to be with the Lord now, but she was one of the first Hispanic women to graduate from law school in her community. And she was just a great leader. And she always focused on bringing others up along the journey with her. She was never satisfied with sort of breaking the glass ceiling for herself. She always looked for ways to help other people rise higher. And so I really admire Linda. And through my work in corporate communications, my job was to support her and the initiatives that she was trying to create in the organization. And so we worked together on a lot of projects, me supporting her from a marketing and communication standpoint, even though it was for diversity and inclusion. And that work and that relationship evolved over the span of a couple of years. And I started to gradually volunteer more and more to help Linda with projects. And one of those kind of big pivotal moments, Linda invited me to become a certified trainer for diversity training at the company that we worked at. And I went through the process, became a certified trainer, and that is really how I started moving further into the human resources and workplace culture industries. And what I appreciate about Linda is that she saw something in me. She saw my passion, she saw my capability, and she just kept pulling that thread. And she just kept feeding me new opportunities to practice, to get my feet wet. And she supported me along the way. She guided me so that I could be successful. I mean, I clearly had to do the work, but I appreciated how much she supported me and was there for me along the way. And it reminds me of that verse in Proverbs 27, verse 17, that says, iron sharpens iron. And so this might be a moment for you to reflect on who's sharpening you right now. Who are you allowing to sharpen you? And of course, who are you sharpening? So, who are you mentoring, and how can you reach out and pull others up along with you? Listening leaders look for ways to mentor others, but they certainly look for ways to listen and learn from mentors and other wise counsel. Another favorite story is the story of Dan. And one day I hope to kind of share more of my story with Dan. So I won't go into a lot of detail right now about it, but Dan was a little bit of a mentor, but he was mostly a sponsor. And so Dan was instrumental in me becoming a vice president at a Fortune 500 company. It's a long story, so I won't go into it right now. And plus, this is a plug for Dan to come on and share it for himself. But basically, a brief encounter turned into me having what was supposed to be a 30-minute meet and greet. Dan was our new CHRO. He was onboarding and having conversations with different leaders. At the time, I'm not even sure I was a director yet. We had our 30-minute meet and greet. It actually turned into a 2-hour conversation. And I'll just say the rest is history. But Dan is an amazing example of sponsoring someone, or in my case, he sponsored my career. And the difference between a mentor and a sponsor is that a sponsor creates access. A sponsor uses their reputation, their influence, their power, their voice to open doors for another person. And so they're basically putting their name on the line for you. And so I'm so grateful to have had Dan in my career to advocate for me and to see potential in me that I definitely did not see for myself. And now I want to talk about David, and you're going to actually hear from David. When I recently reconnected with David, my former mentor, he reminded me how humility, trust, and feedback form the foundation of a listening leader. Take a listen. Before we continue, let me ask you, have you ever wondered how to tell if it's God's voice or just your own thoughts? In the Flow is so much more than a podcast. Each season, I produce a free resource to support your growth. And for this series on the listening leader, I created a free devotional called How to Hear God at Work. It'll help you slow down and recognize God's leading in everyday decisions, whether you're leading a team, a business, or your own heart. Visit IamKelleyJohnson.com and click on the resources section to get your free copy today.
Okay. So the first thought I had was how much time has passed since we were together in Dallas. I mean, it's amazing. And then I started to reflect back on the different, I've had three basic major career moves in my life. One was at the age of 22, I was asked to become a resident manager of a 13-island resort in the Bahamas, right out of college. I think you might remember that story. But
I do.
And I had a lot of experience there because I was like the first experience out of college into a position, and a lot of people were advising me that I was going too far, too fast, and that I was not ready for this and everything. Make a very long story short, my father said to me, he said, David, well, I said, Dad, what should I do? He said, how old are you? And I said, I'm 22. He says, so how long will it take before you'll know whether this is going to work or not? And I said, probably I'd be 23. And he says, and so you'll be 23 and you'll have had a great experience. Have confidence in yourself and go try it. Put your mind to it. And if you put your mind to it, you can do it. That was the first thing, that career. I was 15 years there with that company. and then did very well with them. We did a lot of exciting things, and I'm not going to focus on that today with you. But then in 1989, I moved to realize that the island position was either something I needed to keep sand in my shoes for the rest of my career, or I needed to get the sand out of my shoes and move back to reality in the mainland. So I came to Dallas and I worked with Joe McCarthy, who was the president of Motel 6 at the time. And then a year after that, Accor Hotels came in and bought Motel 6, as you remember. And most of my experience in my 20 years with Accor were all tied, and I think this is kind of where you're coming from with what you're exploring in this video, is tied to the fact that Accor had a very well-established culture in the company. And I had no concept of culture in my style of management. I have my own personal style of management, which worked very well for me working in the islands. But I had to learn what Accor's culture was all about. It took a year for George to put the new management team in place, and I was one of the lucky ones that survived that. And it wasn't because I had built up all kinds of experience in business. It was because George took a risk on me. And I guess he and I had many conversations and discussions and everything. And one thing that he said to me that I'll never forget, was really, I've reminded myself of it many, many times over the course of my career. You know how people say you've got to earn my trust? Well, George was one that said, you don't have to earn my trust. You have to maintain my trust. And so I didn't have to work to prove myself with him. And I told him very openly from the very get-go, George, I know what I know, and I know what I don't know. And I think that's also a very important aspect of transparency that's necessary in a culture like Accor. Be honest with yourself about what you're good at and what you don't, but you're not good at. And I went to France and I learned more about the culture of Accor and realized there that a big part of what I was doing was not just fixing the product, but I had to try to fix the people, build people around me that would be supporting what I was trying to achieve for the company. And that's, I got into the whole mentoring thing at that time and learned learned how to go about doing that by experience because I'd never done it before myself. So one question you had for me was why did I select you? What was it about you that caused me to want to? I don't remember the exact sequence of when you came into the program, but I do remember that I employed my ears and listened to a lot of what people were saying. A lot of people saying a lot of very good things about you and the way they worked with you and how you communicated and how you strove to excel without pushing people out of your way to do it. You were very communicative and very collaborative and easy to discuss and dialogue with and all of that. So I started making a list of people that I thought could be good candidates for mentoring. And I was working with the team that I had built around me at the time and getting them to do the same thing. And they all bought into it. You being one of, I think if I remember properly, about 10 or 12 people that were the MTs at the time. We started down that road. How do you recall it?
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing the feedback that you got about me. I remember I didn't necessarily I don't think I had a choice in sort of who I wanted my mentor to be. I probably had mentioned that you were one of the executives that I admired, but had not really had a chance to work very closely with at the time. You may recall I worked closely with George and Carol, especially, but I wasn't necessarily working directly with a lot of the executive committee members at the time. And so I was also interested because it would be an opportunity to have exposure with our luxury brands, right? Because I mostly supported our economy brands at the time. But I really, from afar, admired your leadership style. And I don't, okay, so I'm going to share what your reputation was
Sure.
at the time that you became my mentor. Someone had shared with me, I was not in the meeting, but someone had shared with me that you had a very unique ability to call somebody out and they not know it. Meaning you sort of yes, there was a knife, but it was so smooth, the blade was so sharp that people didn't necessarily feel it. But you made your point, and you made your point in a way that did not necessarily bring the person down. You were firm, you were direct, but you delivered it in a way that left the person whole, and not necessarily disrespected or embarrassed in the moment. That was something that I really admired. It's what I had heard about you, hadn't necessarily witnessed it for myself, but I thought, I want to be that kind of leader. I want to be able to address the difficult things, but I want to be able to deliver it in a way that I'm not necessarily damaging the relationship, but people know exactly where I stand and there's no question about it. So, were you aware of that perception
Actually,
or
no, I wasn't. I wasn't.
okay.
It's funny what you say. One of the things that I think later on you asked, what did I wish that I'd learned earlier in the process? One of the things that I wish that I'd learned, I learned it pretty quickly in the core, but the power of feedback, and the power of constructive feedback, and the learning that comes from all of that, I could have benefited personally from doing that faster in my life. So,
Yeah.
one thing that I considered that was really successful and powerful with the fidelity experience at Seaport was the roundtables that I had. Because I did roundtables with rank and file employees, sometimes with rank and file with managers, sometimes with managers without the rank and file. But the approach, it took a couple of years. I was there 12 years. So it took a few years to get down to the point of where they trusted that what was said in that roundtable was sacred. It's in a book. And my secretary was there and she took notes. And then the notes would be given to the people that were at the roundtable, and they'd see what the notes were, and they could edit those notes if they didn't feel comfortable with it. And they would point out things that we'd go through the list of words for the culture. And they'd say, do you see evidence of this? Or do you see any problem with this? And some people would come out anonymously saying, oh, there's somebody in that department that's not doing something right. And then we pass that feedback back to the managers responsible. But that was a huge, powerful source of information that ultimately caused changes to happen within the departments of the organization. It was very valuable.
Yeah. Well, I remember you sometimes coming back from your visits to Sofitel and sharing with me some of the high level comments that you would learn by doing roundtables when you were over Sofitel and Novotel at the time. And I even remember, because you'll recall, I was responsible for the diversity
Right.
program at Accor, and you would come back and sometimes share things or comments related to the diversity program and things like that. And so that's yet another example of one of my takeaways from having you as a mentor, just sort of seeing the way that you always invested time. You would invested time to talk directly to employees versus always relying on your leaders to tell you. So really appreciated that too. What I love about David's leadership story is that listening was a primary strategy for him. It wasn't just this side skill or secondary skill. It is a practice that he consistently used to build trust, engagement, culture, and ultimately results. True mentors don't just give you answers. They help you listen. They sharpen your listening. They help you fine tune your ears. So, my question for you as we get ready to wrap up is, who are the voices that are helping you listen better? And what kind of voices are they? Are you listening to just one type of voice, one type of person? I believe as believers, we have an opportunity to listen to multifaceted voices, not just everyone who either believes like us, looks like us, lives like us. And then, of course, our primary listening is to attune to God, is to attune to Holy Spirit. I want to leave you with a verse, Proverbs 19:20. Listen to advice and accept discipline. And at the end, you will be counted among the wise. Mentors can help us fine tune our hearing and our listening. Our circle or our community can help us stay in that rhythm and provide us with that consistency and the safety of listening to other voices and perspectives. Thank you for flowing with me today. If this episode strengthened your spirit and leadership, be sure to subscribe and share it with a friend. Remember, deeper clarity starts in community. Visit IamKelleyJohnson.com for free devotionals and to learn more about Raya Circles, where faith and leadership truly go together in the flow.